When we look at the world around us, on nature, we are impressed with its beauty and grandeur. Each thing we perceive, though it may be vanishingly small, is in itself a world, that is, like the whole of the universe, matter and force governed by law, a world, the contemplation of which fills us with feelings of wonder and irresistibly urges us to ceaseless thought and inquiry. But in all this vast world, of all objects our senses reveal to us, the most marvelous, the most appealing to our imagination, appears no doubt a highly developed organism, a thinking being. If there is anything fitted to make us admire nature's handiwork, it is certainly this inconceivable structure, which performs its innumerable motions of obedience to external influence. To understand its workings, to get a deeper insight into this nature's masterpiece, has ever been for thinkers a fascinating aim, and after many centuries of arduous research men have arrived at a fair understanding of the functions of its organs and senses. Again, in all the perfect harmony of its parts, of the parts which constitute the material or tangible of our being, of all its organs and senses, the eye is the most wonderful. It is the most precious, the most indispensable of our perceptive or directive organs. It is the great gateway through which all knowledge enters the mind. Of all our organs, it is the one which is in the most intimate relation with that which we call intellect. So intimate is this relation that it is often said, the very soul shows itself in the eye. It can be taken as a fact, which the theory of the action of the eye implies, that for each external impression, that is, for each image produced upon the retina, the ends of the visual nerves concerned in the conveyance of the impression to the mind must be under a peculiar stress or at a vibratory state. It now does not seem improbable that, when by the power of thought an image is evoked, a distinct reflex action, no matter how weak, is exerted upon certain ends of the visual nerves, and therefore upon the retina. Will it ever be within human power to analyze the condition of the retina when disturbed by thought or reflex action, by the help of some optical or other means of such sensitiveness that a clear idea of its state might be gained at any time? If this were possible, then the problem of reading one's thoughts with precision, like the characters of an open book, might be much easier to solve than many problems belonging to the domain of positive physical science, in the solution of which many, if not the majority, of scientific men implicitly believe. Helmholtz has shown that the fundi of the eye are themselves luminous, and he was able to see, in total darkness, the movement of his arm by the light of his own eyes. This is one of the most remarkable experiments recorded in the history of science, and probably only a few men could satisfactorily repeat it, for it is very likely that the luminosity of the eyes is associated with uncommon activity of the brain and great imaginative power. It is fluorescence of brain action, as it were. Another fact having a bearing on this subject, which has probably been noted by many, since it is stated in popular expressions, but which I cannot recollect to have found chronicled as a positive result of observation, is, that at times, when a sudden idea or image presents itself to the intellect, there is a distinct and sometimes painful sensation of luminosity produced in the eye, observable even in broad daylight. The saying, then, that the soul shows itself in the eye, is deeply founded, and we feel that it expresses a great truth. It has a profound meaning even for one who, like a poet or artist only following his inborn instinct or love for nature, finds delight in aimless thoughts and in the mere contemplation of natural phenomena, but a still more profound meaning for one who, in the spirit of positive scientific investigation, seeks to ascertain the causes of the effects. It is principally the natural philosopher, the physicist, for whom the eye is the subject of the most intense admiration. Two facts about the eye must forcibly impress the mind of the physicist, notwithstanding he may think or say that it is an imperfect optical instrument, forgetting that the very conception of that which is perfect, or seems so to him, has been gained through this same instrument. First, the eye is, as far as our positive knowledge goes, the only organ which is directly affected by that subtle medium, which, as science teaches us, must fill all space. Secondly, it is the most sensitive of our organs, incomparably more sensitive to external impressions than any other. The organ of hearing implies the impact of ponderable bodies, the organ of smell, the transference of detached material particles, and the organs of taste, and of touch or force, the direct contact, or at least some interference of ponderable matter, and this is true even in those instances of animal organisms, in which some of these organs are developed to a degree of truly marvelous perfection. This being so, it seems wonderful that the organ of sight solely should be capable of being stirred by that, which all our other organs are powerless to detect, yet which plays an essential part in all natural phenomena, which transmits all energy and sustains all motion, and, that most intricate of all, life. but which has properties such that even a scientifically trained mind cannot help drawing a distinction between it and all that is called matter. Considering merely this, and the fact that the eye, by its marvelous power, widens our otherwise very narrow range of perception far beyond the limits of the small world which is our own, to embrace myriads of other worlds, suns and stars in the infinite depths of the universe, would make it justifiable to assert that it is an organ of a higher order. His performances are beyond comprehension. Nature, as far as we know, never produced anything more wonderful.
We will move on to the next section shortly, but before that, I want to share something that might be very useful for you. Inspired by successful YouTube creators making fortunes from their channels, then Tube Mastery and Monetization course from Matt Barr can help you get real results on YouTube with personal attention from him and his content team. Lots of people have already succeeded with their channels thanks to him. He also has Tube Magic software tool that can help you accomplish more when it comes to making content. Links in the description. I've also prepared a video for you that talks more about that, as well as solutions to challenges like online security, financial progress, and additional creativity. There, we'll explore these topics with respect and care for you. I warmly invite you to watch this video when you get a chance. Either way, your support is the current that powers this channel. And now back to the show.
We can get barely a faint idea of its prodigious power by analyzing what it does and by comparing. When ether waves impinge upon the human body, they produce the sensations of warmth or cold, pleasure or pain, or perhaps other sensations of which we are not aware, and any degree or intensity of these sensations, which degrees are infinite in number, hence an infinite number of distinct sensations. But our sense of touch or our sense of force cannot reveal to us these differences in degree or intensity unless they are very great. Now we can readily conceive how an organism, such as the human, in the eternal process of evolution, or more philosophically speaking, adaptation to nature, being constrained to the use of only the sense of touch or force, for instance, might develop this sense to such a degree of sensitiveness or perfection that it would be capable of distinguishing the minutest differences in the temperature of a body even at some distance to a hundredth or thousandth or millionth part of a degree. Yet, even this apparently impossible performance would not begin to compare with that of the eye, which is capable of distinguishing and conveying to the mind in a single instant innumerable peculiarities of the body, be it in form, or color, or other respects. This power of the eye rests upon two things, namely, the rectilinear propagation of the disturbance by which it is affected, and upon its sensitiveness. To say that the eye is sensitive is not saying anything. Compared with it, all other organs are monstrously crude. The organ of smell, which guides a dog on the trail of a deer, the organ of touch or force, which guides an insect in its wanderings, the organ of hearing, which is affected by the slightest disturbances of the air, are sensitive organs, to be sure, but what do they compare with the human eye? No doubt it responds to the faintest echoes or reverberations of the medium. No doubt it brings us tidings from other worlds, infinitely remote, but in a language we cannot as yet always understand. And why not? Because we live in a medium filled with air and other gases, vapors, and a dense mass of solid particles flying about. These play an important part in many phenomena. They fritter away the energy of the vibrations before they can reach the eye. They, too, are the carriers of germs of destruction. They get into our lungs and other organs, clog up the channels, and imperceptibly, yet inevitably, arrest the stream of life. Could we but do away with all ponderable matter in the line of sight of the telescope, it would reveal to us undreamt of marvels. Even the unaided eye, I think, would be capable of distinguishing in the pure medium small objects at distances measured probably by hundreds or perhaps thousands of miles. But there is something else about the eye which impresses us still more than these wonderful features which we observed, viewing it from the standpoint of a physicist, merely as an optical instrument, something which appeals to us more than its marvelous faculty of being directly affected by the vibrations of the medium, without interference of gross matter, and more than its inconceivable sensitiveness and discerning power. It is its significance in the processes of life. No matter what one's views on nature and life may be, he must stand amazed when, for the first time in his thoughts, he realizes the importance of the eye in the physical processes and mental performances of the human organism. And how could it be otherwise when he realizes that the eye is the means to which the human race has acquired the entire knowledge it possesses, that it controls all our motions, more still, and our actions? There is no way of acquiring knowledge except through the eye. What is the foundation of all philosophical systems of ancient and modern times, in fact, of all the philosophy of men? I am, I think, therefore I am. But how could I think, and how would I know that I exist, if I had not the I? For knowledge involve consciousness. Consciousness involves ideas, conceptions involve pictures or images, and images the sense of vision, and therefore the organ of sight. But how about blind men, will be asked. Yes, a blind man may depict in magnificent poems forms and scenes from real life, from a world he physically does not see. A blind man may touch the keys of an instrument with unerring precision, may model the fastest boat, may discover and invent, calculate and construct, may do still greater wonders. But all the blind men who have done such things have descended from those who had seeing eyes. Nature may reach the same result in many ways. Like a wave in the physical world, in the infinite ocean of the medium which pervades all, so in the world of organism, in life. An impulse started proceeds onward, at times, may be, with the speed of light, at times, again, so slowly that for ages and ages it seems to stay, passing through processes of a complexity inconceivable to men, but in all its forms, in all its stages, its energy, ever and ever integrally present. A single ray of light from a distant star falling upon the eye of a tyrant in bygone times may have altered the course of his life, may have changed the destiny of nations, may have transformed the surface of the globe. So intricate, so inconceivably complex are the processes in nature. In no way can we get such an overwhelming idea of the grandeur of nature as when we consider that, in accordance with the law of the conservation of energy, throughout the infinite, the forces are in a perfect balance, and hence the energy of a single thought may determine the motion of a universe. It is not necessary that every individual, not even that every generation or many generations, should have the physical instrument of sight in order to be able to form images and to think, that is, form ideas or conceptions, but sometime or other, during the process of evolution, the eye certainly must have existed, else thought, as we understand it, would be impossible. Else conceptions, like spirit, intellect, mind, call it as you may, could not exist. It is conceivable that in some other world, in some other beings, the eye is replaced by a different organ, equally or more perfect, but these beings cannot be men. Now, what prompts us all to voluntary motions and actions of any kind? Again, the eye. If I am conscious of the motion, I must have an idea or conception, that is, an image, therefore the eye. If I am not precisely conscious of the motion, it is, because the images are vague or indistinct, being blurred by the superimposition of many. But when I perform the motion, does the impulse which prompts me to the action come from within or from without? The greatest physicists have not disdained to endeavor to answer this and similar questions, and have at times abandoned themselves to the delights of pure and unrestrained thought. Such questions are generally considered not to belong to the realm of positive physical science, but will before long be annexed to its domain. Helmholtz has probably thought more on life than any modern scientist. Lord Kelvin expressed his belief that life's process is electrical and that there is a force inherent to the organism and determining its motions. Just as much as I am convinced of any physical truth, I am convinced that the motive impulse must come from the outside. For, consider the lowest organism we know, and there are probably many lower ones, an aggregation of a few cells only. If it is capable of voluntary motion, it can perform an infinite number of motions, all definite and precise. But now a mechanism consisting of a finite number of parts, and few at that, cannot perform an infinite number of definite motions. Hence the impulses which govern its movements must come from the environment. So, the atom, the ulterior element of the universe's structure, is tossed about in space eternally, a prey to external influences, like a boat in a troubled sea. Were it to stop its motion, it would die, had to rest. If such a thing could exist, would be matter dead. Death of matter. Never has a sentence of deeper philosophical meaning been uttered. This is the way in which Prof. Dewar forcibly expresses it in the description of his admirable experiments, in which liquid oxygen is handled as one handles water, and air at ordinary pressure is made to condense and even to solidify by the intense cold, experiments which serve to illustrate, in his language, the last feeble manifestations of life, the last quiverings of matter about to die. But human eyes shall not witness such death.
We will move on to the next section shortly, but before that, I want to share something that might be very useful for you. Inspired by successful YouTube creators making fortunes from their channels, then Tube Mastery and Monetization course from Matt Parr can help you get real results on YouTube with personal attention from him and his content team. Lots of people have already succeeded with their channels thanks to him. He also has two magic software tools that can help you accomplish more when it comes to making content. Links in the description. I've also prepared a video for you that talks more about that, as well as solutions to challenges like online security, financial progress, and additional creativity. There, we'll explore these topics with respect and care for you. I warmly invite you to watch this video when you get a chance. Either way, your support is the current that powers this channel. And now back to the show.
There is no death of matter, for throughout the infinite universe all has to move, to vibrate, that is, to live. I have made the preceding statements at the peril of treading upon metaphysical ground in my desire to introduce the subject of this lecture in a manner not altogether uninteresting, I may hope, to an audience such as I have the honor to address. But now then, returning to the subject, this divine organ of sight, this indispensable instrument for thought and all intellectual enjoyment, which lays open to us the marvels of this universe, through which we have acquired what knowledge we possess, and which prompts us to, and controls, all our physical and mental activity. By what is it affected? By light. What is light? We have witnessed the great strides which had been made in all departments of science in recent years. So great have been the advances that we cannot refrain from asking ourselves, is this all true, or is it but a dream? Centuries ago men have lived, have thought, discovered, invented, and have believed that they were soaring while they were merely proceeding at a snail's pace. So we too may be mistaken. But taking the truth of the observed events as one of the implied facts of science, we must rejoice in the immense progress already made, and still more in the anticipation of what must come, judging from the possibilities opened up by modern research. There is, however, an advance which we have been witnessing, which must be particularly gratifying to every lover of progress. It is not a discovery, or an invention, or an achievement in any particular direction. It is an advance in all directions of scientific thought and experiment. I mean the generalization of the natural forces and phenomena, the looming up of a certain broad idea on the scientific horizon. It is this idea which has, however, long ago taken possession of the most advanced minds, to which I desire to call your attention, and which I intend to illustrate in a general way in these experiments as the first step in answering the question, what is light? And to realize the modern meaning of this word. It is beyond the scope of my lecture to dwell upon the subject of light in general, my object being merely to bring presently to your notice a certain class of light effects and a number of phenomena observed in pursuing the study of these effects. But to be consistent in my remarks, it is necessary to state that, according to that idea, now accepted by the majority of scientific men as a positive result of theoretical and experimental investigation, the various forms or manifestations of energy which were generally designated as electric, or more precisely, electromagnetic, are energy manifestations of the same nature as those of radiant heat and light. Therefore, the phenomena of light and heat and others besides these may be called electrical phenomena. Thus, electrical science has become the mother science of all, and its study has become all important. The day when we shall know exactly what electricity is will chronicle an event probably greater, more important than any other recorded in the history of the human race. The time will come when the comfort, the very existence perhaps, of man will depend upon that wonderful agent. For our existence and comfort we require heat, light, and mechanical power. How do we now get all these? We get them from fuel. We get them by consuming material. What will man do when the forests disappear, when the coal fields are exhausted? Only one thing according to our present knowledge will remain, that is, to transmit power at great distances. Men will go to the waterfalls, to the tides, which are the stores of an infinitesimal part of nature's immeasurable energy. There will they harness the energy and transmit the same to their settlements, to warm their homes by, to give them light, and to keep their obedient slaves, the machines, toiling. But how will they transmit this energy if not by electricity? Judge, then, if the comfort, nay, the very existence of man will not depend on electricity. I am aware that this view is not that of a practical engineer, but neither is it that of an illusionist, for it is certain that power transmission, which at present is merely a stimulus to enterprise, will some day be a dire necessity. It is more important for the student who takes up the study of light phenomena to make himself thoroughly acquainted with certain modern views than to peruse entire books on the subject of light itself, as disconnected from these views. Were I therefore to make these demonstrations before students seeking information, and for the sake of the few of those who may be present, give me leave to so assume, it would be my principal endeavor to impress these views upon their minds in this series of experiments. It might be sufficient for this purpose to perform a simple and well-known experiment. I might take a familiar appliance, a Leyden jar, charge it from a frictional machine, and then discharge it. In explaining to you its permanent state when charged and its transitory condition when discharging, calling your attention to the forces which enter into play and to the various phenomena they produce, and pointing out the relation of the forces and phenomena, I might fully succeed in illustrating that modern idea. No doubt, to the thinker, this simple experiment would appeal as much as the most magnificent display. But this is to be an experimental demonstration, and one which should possess, besides instructive, also entertaining features, and as such, a simple experiment, such as the one cited, would not go very far towards the attainment of the lecturer's aim. I must therefore choose another way of illustrating, more spectacular certainly, but perhaps also more instructive. Instead of the frictional machine and Leyden jar, I shall avail myself in these experiments of an induction coil of peculiar properties, which was described in detail by me in a lecture before the London Institution of Electrical Engineers in Feb 1892. This induction coil is capable of yielding currents of enormous potential differences, alternating with extreme rapidity. With this apparatus, I shall endeavour to show you three distinct classes of effects, or phenomena, and it is my desire that each experiment, while serving for the purposes of illustration, should at the same time teach us some novel truth, or show us some novel aspect of this fascinating science. But before doing this, it seems proper and useful to dwell upon the apparatus employed, and method of obtaining the high potentials and high frequency currents which are made use of in these experiments.
Thanks for watching to the end of this video. If you want more content like this, there is a playlist that should be popping up right now. Stay tuned for more. I've also made this free video for you with solutions for creativity, financial strength, and online security. Either way, your interest is the current that powers this channel. My name is Konstantin. Until next time.